It'll say. All right, we're live. Bracken is on mute. He's getting his Diet Coke because we're gearing up for a big evening here. We're gonna try to keep it to an hour, but I'll tell you what, we got a lot to go over. Bracken, have you recovered from the Alabama trip? Like, how you feeling? For real, be honest with me.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty good. My skin's starting to dry out again already, so that didn't last very long. But I did enjoy the first few days. Let's see, how long has it been? It's been a week, right? Yeah, we were there Thursday.
Yeah, we got back. I got back Saturday night late. You got back
Yeah, so that's a
Sunday.
week. But yeah, I just noticed last night. I told my wife, I was like, "Oh, my skin's finally starting to dry out from that detox."
Yeah, the
But
Alabama.
as far as physically and mentally, yeah, I've recovered. I'm good.
Glade, about you?
I think it hit me today and just about wiped me out. But I've been going nonstop for a week now.
It was a grind and a lot of fun. I mean, we'll get into it. We'll talk about it. One thing I noticed is I've got pretty bad tennis elbow. It actually, so I was worried about the ability to work productively in Alabama. It actually felt better in Alabama than in Utah. That's got to be part of the humidity or something. I'm not sure, but we'll get into that. Want to welcome everybody. We got Jack and Danae. We got Tiny Creek in the house. Jason Seaward. Jason's up in Canada, if I remember right. We got, I'm not going to say it. We got our homie from Manuherikia. I'm not going to say that right. I won't try it again. From New Zealand. So just a bunch of people. Welcome. I think Bruce is around and he might join us a little bit later. But as always, jump in, be engaged in the chat, ask questions, and we'll try to answer them. And what's up, Redfish? Roll Tide, go Cougs. Oh, hold on. Where's my Alabama hat? Shoot, it's in my room. I'd wear that for you. Okay, hey, the giveaway, guys. We got the giveaway today, big one. We got some of the Apis Tactical gloves here. We got the long gloves. These are the same ones that I use. These are XLs, but I've got a few sizes. So whoever wins this today when we do the giveaway, I'll try to accommodate the size if I've got it. If I don't, then tough luck. But these are really nice gloves. Glade, you got a pair of these Apis Tactical gloves, don't you?
I do have a pair of those, and I love them.
Yeah,
mine are the shorter ones, though. I think those go further down your wrist, and mine end right about here.
Yeah.
I think the cuff on those are a little bigger, but a lot longer. But I like mine. I like the shorter cuff, but
yeah, those are nice. Glade was actually the reason that I got my Apis Tactical gloves because I saw him wearing them before we had even met. Glade, I saw you wearing them on one of your videos. I'm like, man, those look slick. I want some of those. So I reached out to Apis Tactical, and they provide the giveaways for us. So give them some love, and we'll do a giveaway of these gloves at the end of the show, or maybe the middle of the show, whenever we want to. Just happy you're here, and what should we do, Bracken? Hashtag gloves. Yeah, let's do hashtag gloves.
Yeah, let's do hashtag gloves.
Yeah, and you don't have to do that now. You can do that at the end.
I don't have that spinny thing you do.
What's that?
So I don't have the spinny thing you do. I could start trying to take down names, but
that's okay. We'll gather them at the end and we'll do it. Hashtag gloves, Jack and Danae. I think Danae won a pair of gloves. I do have to say this, and I'm so sorry for all of our, like, if you're out of country, my wife forbade me from doing giveaways out of country. It was too expensive. So our New Zealand, Canadian, Australian, whatever friends, I am sorry. Still put in hashtag gloves, and we'll
if
smile.
You win, we'll mentally send them to you.
Yeah,
we'll sneak it past his wife.
Yeah, we'll send you a big heart like this. We'll tell you we love you, and then we won't send you the gloves, and we'll spin again. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about our what's going on in our beehives, and then we want to jump into our impressions of Alabama, Bracken had been there before, but Glade and I think this was a first. Was this a first for you, Glade, in Alabama?
Yeah. I'd never been to Alabama before.
So we'll talk about Alabama and our first impressions there. We're going to talk about Bruce's setup, his bee yards, everything, kind of our impressions of that. Then pulling honey supers and the honey extraction operation. If you follow Bruce, first of all, if you don't follow Bruce, you should. He's a great follow, but he's been putting out these honey extraction videos for years, and every year the process is a little bit better. They add something to it, and they do their capping differently, their extraction differently, et cetera, and it was smooth. So we'll talk about that. So we got a lot to cover. We'll see how much we can get to, and maybe we jump all over the place, but we'll have a good time. So let's start with the week in our bee yards. What are you up to, Bracken? You put out a pretty sweet video yesterday. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I just went and checked a couple of those are the only bees I've looked at since I left. So I haven't done a whole lot at videos. Literally, I just checked a few nukes to see if the queen was doing good, and I have a couple of those little styrofoam mating nukes that I left. When I took the queen away, they had quite a few eggs and brood, and last year I actually did that, and I think I raised, I don't know, 4 or 5 queens just from taking the mated queen out of the styrofoam nuke, and they made their own. In fact, I know I have 2 of them still in my operation going, and they're doing just fine. So I grafted a queen. She laid eggs. I took her. They made eggs out of her, or a egg queen cell out of her eggs. And it did. I have a video on that. I think I talk about it. But yeah, that's all I've done really. This Saturday I'm gonna get into them. And I think the flow's kind of slowed down here. There's not much blooming anymore. The ones that I worked this week, I could tell already they were a little bit more snippy than they usually are. I didn't have smoke, but even when I don't have smoke, they're usually not that snippy. So
you seem to be like king of. You're a sucker for suffering, Bracken. Like, you've gone out there a few times, shorts, no smoke. You like to get zapped here and there.
Like to feel alive.
Yeah, that's right.
The only way I feel alive, I'm dead inside.
It was a good video. If you haven't checked out Bracken's video, go see it. One of the parts that I chuckled, I probably shouldn't have, but there's always 1 to 3 spots in Bracken's videos where I laugh out loud, and I don't think he means to be funny, but the one little hive that you popped open, those styrofoam hives that you popped open, and you would close the door, so like half of them were dead inside, and you're just like, well, killed those, and it's just, beekeeping, death is part of it, but I laughed out loud a little bit at that.
Good. I'm glad my failures make people laugh.
Yeah. Glade, what's up with you? What's going on in your bee yard?
When I got home, I actually took the next day off and went out and checked bees. Had 2 goals to do. Just one, I went around and made sure they had enough room for honey. So I was stacking honey supers and giving them some extra room, checkerboarding a few frames. And then I set up a cell builder and grafted some queens again this is my second round of queens, and checked on my first round, which it's a little bit early. It was 9 days when I checked, and so a little early. I saw a virgin queen or 2, but nothing's really laying yet. So when I get back from where I'm at next week, I'll be checking again and see where I'm at. And hopefully, I've got some queens starting to show up.
How many did you graft?
I grafted 30 the first time, and I thought I only missed 5, but I actually missed 12. So that kind of was a bummer. And then this time I grafted another 30, and I have no idea how many I've got yet. So I'll check Monday. Probably Monday I'll check and see where I'm at.
secret to happiness is low expectations. So if you get one, that's awesome. If you get more than that, win.
Hold on, these are quotable quotes from Bracken. We've got the pain lets me know I'm alive, and the secret to happiness is low expectations. Somebody write these down. Like somebody write these down because we got to put them on a T-shirt. Those need to be our next giveaways. Like Bracken quotes. Those are that's fantastic. By the way, folks, like 14 of us on here, the 14 faithful, because we're taking over Dave Burns live stream one viewer at a time. This is the Utah crew right here. This is the Utah crew. The Bracken's northern Utah. I'm kind of central, and Glade's out there in what would we call that? Eastern Utah, I guess.
Yeah, northeastern Utah is typically what we refer to.
Yeah, so
No
Utah.
man.
That's right. Utah is the new Alabama for beekeeping.
Yeah.
I laugh. We're having a good time. Hey, should we jump into our trip? Should we talk about it?
Sure.
Should we get into it? Burns is feeling the pressure. Redfish, roll tide, baby. Love that guy. Hey, to start with this, Bracken and I are sporting these. I don't know if Bruce is going to sell these later, but he's got these sweet hats that we got because we took part in the honey extraction down there, and they're nice. I like them. Comfy.
I don't have mine with me, so.
Oh yeah, no big deal. Well, let's start with Alabama generally. Glade, why don't you kick us off? What were your impressions of Alabama first time there?
Green, lots of growth. You can't see anything.
Yeah, kind of flat, right? We're used to Utah.
Yeah, a little bit of hills, but not much. It's flat. You can't see anything. I have no idea which direction was which down there, unless the sun was coming up.
Yeah, we'd point a direction and say, which direction is that? And we'd all have different answers.
I have no idea.
Well, the reason why that is a big deal to us, so you understand where we're coming from. We have a mountain range. Bracken and I have a mountain range right next to us that runs north and south. And Glade has a mountain range right next to him that runs east and west. So you always know which direction things are. I mean, of course, the sun will tell you, but that can be deceiving sometimes. Fair, Glade?
Fair. But as you know, in Utah, if you know where the mountains are, you know exactly where you're at. You can tell, oh, yeah, well, that's north. Or if you're on the Wasatch Front, the mountains are on the east side.
What stood out to you about Alabama, Bracken?
They drive on their grass.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's weird. You don't drive on the grass.
In Utah.
You keep it dry, or you keep it wet and alive. You don't drive on it.
Yeah,
we
all
spend
over.
a lot of work making our grass stay green in Utah. If you
Park
drive
their
on it,
tractors on it. No, yeah. I don't know. Same as Glade. Obviously, I mean, the first thing I think of is, wow, we really do live in a desert.
Yeah.
Like it. I mean, we have a fair amount. I was looking at today over the city when I was up. We were at work and I was looking kind of just out and about, and I was like, there's a fair amount of green here. Like there's Brigham has some trees and stuff, but like compared to where we came from, we are straight up desert. And you're more so than us, Glade. Like you're probably you are wicked desert compared to even where I'm at.
Yeah, if there's not irrigation water on it, it's not green.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If there's not running water that goes to it or can get to it, it's dead and brown.
That was an interesting thing to me. Some people had irrigation, kind of drilled their own well, made their own irrigation, but largely it seemed to me, and Bracken, you're a farmer, so you correct me here, but it seemed like the agriculture there was just based on the rain. If it stops raining, then stuff's going to turn brown and die, and they just rely on the rain more than they do irrigation. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say so. I know like Bruce said, corn requires a fair amount of water, so a lot of those center pivots and stuff that were out there, they were on cornfields. I don't know much about cotton or peanuts. Like obviously they do well in a wet environment, so
And
What
that's
do you
about all
think?
we saw was cotton,
Cotton
peanuts,
peanut.
and a little bit of corn.
Yeah, there might have been a few grass, like pasture grass fields here and there, but yeah, for the most part, those were the three biggest crops.
I love the green. I thought it was beautiful. Even if it's flat, you don't have the mountains. It's a different type of beauty. Um, and the trees, those thick trees, combined with the open, cleared lands with the farms and the agriculture, I thought was beautiful. Um, a couple other things. What did you think about the boiled peanuts, Bracken? You ate your fair share of those.
Yeah, I owe somebody a little bit of money. Yeah,
No, you don't.
I liked them. They were good. They were, whether it was just the moment and like they were hitting the spot,
We were just
or
hungry.
yeah, I mean they were good. What is with the boiled peanuts?
What is it with the
It's,
boiled peanuts?
yeah.
It must
You
be
ain't
an
never had
Alabama
none of
thing.
them boiled peanuts.
Boiled peanuts.
Yeah.
So we're just
The peanut
driving.
is boiled.
I think it was our first night there. We're just driving down the road, and Bruce stopped at a place, and there was a guy with a big pot in the back of his
Side of the
truck.
road, just back of his truck.
And
And
and what did he say when we walked up, Bracken? What was it?
Well, Bruce had told him, he's like, these guys are from Utah and they've never had any boiled peanuts. And he went, y'all ain't never had none of these boiled peanuts. Similar to that.
I did love the southern accent from some of these folks. I had to listen carefully on some of them, but it was a cool accent. And so he
for
just had.
those of you
Go
for
ahead.
those of you that don't know, it's peanuts in still in the shell, boiled in salt water. That's it. There's nothing to it. There's no magic there. It's salt water and peanuts still in the shell, and they just boil them until they're soft.
And I think they
And
get them when they're green. So before they pull them when they're not fully ripe.
not maybe not quite ripe. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
then boiled peanuts are nasty. That is funny, Bundy. I didn't think they were nasty. I thought to myself, when I get home, like they're nothing special, but they are simple. When I get home, I would try them, but I'd want to put like if you added, I like vinegary things. If you added a bunch of vinegar to the boiled peanuts and the water in there, would they come out tasting like in salt and vinegar boiled peanuts or some other type of seasoning? Would that work?
I
What do you
don't
think?
I don't know, but I would do something else,
Cajun.
some garlic, some Cajun,
Yeah.
something. They needed just a little more kick to them, a little more
More
flavor to
salt.
them for me.
More
I
salt.
think that was indicative of the batch we bought. I think a lot of people sell the Cajun ones. At least that's what I've been told. But that's unique to Alabama, right? You guys have never experienced anything
No,
like.
I've never seen boiled peanuts.
I think it's in the Carolinas and Florida and stuff. I think it's kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's kind of a southern thing, southeast thing.
Let's see, what else about Alabama? We talked a little bit about the accent. Anything like Bracken can kind of do it, but we went like over to what was the guy's name? Tyler Walker, the Choctaw Bee Company or Honey Company. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just across the border into Florida.
Into Florida, and even the way that he spoke like really easy to understand, but just a thick accent. And then there were phrases, I can't even do them justice. I'm fixing to whatever. There were phrases that they used that you just don't hear. Well, is that right? Like, did you guys notice that? Like some of those different phrases?
Yeah. When he answered the phone, remember when Bruce called him and he answered the phone? I can't remember what he said. He said, "How's it?" or "What's it?" or
What's good? I don't remember what it was.
something. It wasn't hello. It was, Bruce might comment there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something he said specific, and I was like, "Huh, that's different." How's it? Or something like that.
So, like, before we get into the beekeeping, anything else on Alabama? Like, favorite non-beekeeping moment? Anything there? Glade?
Uh, Nothing's coming to mind.
Okay. I did appreciate, like, obviously Bruce is well respected there. I did appreciate like everybody that we met was just really, really kind.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not just an Alabama thing. Maybe that's all over the place, but it was really warming. Like I felt welcome. People were really nice and, you know, diverse. And it was just cool how kind people were to us.
A lot of yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Just Southern hospitality.
Yeah. Yeah. What about before we move on, Bracken calls it the Alabama detox. What about the weather?
Hot and humid.
Hot and humid.
Yep.
I think I sweat more in 3 days than I have in any 3-day period in my life. By far, like your hats are soaked, dripping from your hats, shirt soaked, and I'm not talking like you're a little bit sweaty from basketball and your shirts are wet or your shorts are a little bit wet. I'm talking you might as well have walked into a shower with your clothes on wet. Right? Is that fair, you guys?
Yeah, by the time you're done, for sure.
Yeah, you're
You drank water and Gatorade and it just came out your pores.
Yep.
Yeah,
just about that quick too.
you couldn't stay ahead of the
No.
and we're working hard out there, but you're sweating. How many between the 4 of us with Bruce didn't drink as much water, I noticed. He's probably used to it. How many bottles of water and Gatorade do you think we had in those 3 days?
I don't know.
I know sure. Bruce had that big white cooler full of drinks, and we pretty well emptied that. Just the 4 of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like it was constant, but that's why it's detox.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if we didn't empty it that first night.
Yeah, he might have had to get more. All right, let's jump to Bruce's bee yards and setups. Glade, what was your experience with what stood out to you with the bee yards and his setup?
One that he can have so many hives in one yard and still be making honey off of them. I mean, I have to spread mine out a little bit. I mean, the commercial guy around here, I mean, he'll drop probably 32 in a yard, which, you know, that's probably similar to what Bruce was doing, but I feel like I've got to spread mine out a little bit further in order to, because I only drop 8. I might have 10 hives in a yard, but it feels like if I do much more than that, I don't get as good a honey crop off of them. I guess they're all competing, but you know, it's just so dry out here that there's only so much.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. His yards probably could take more if he wanted to put more.
Probably, and you could tell from opening and cracking hives open that when it came in, it was coming in fast. His hives just seemed to have filled up. You could tell just by the way they were that they filled up pretty quick.
Yeah, and that was his second extraction of the year. What stood out to you, Bracken, with his bee yards?
I like the fact, well, and this, I don't mean this bad or anything, but like his equipment is used but it still works. Like sometimes I worry,
it has extra entrances.
Yeah, like that's okay. Like it's fine. It's one thing if you're, you know, got 4 or 5 colonies and you want them to be all square and, you know, whatever. But like Bruce is a very, very successful beekeeper, and what he's doing is working wonderful. And I think as far as moisture and, you know, humidity and problems, I think he deals with a lot more than we do here in Utah. I mean, he's got hive beetles. It rains all the time, but like his bees still survive. Like some of those lids and some of those boxes, like I don't mean this bad, Bruce, but they needed to be replaced in my opinion. Like, but they still work. Like, and then I get here and look at mine and I'm like, I still got 5 more years with that box, like compared to, and it's not that his stuff is bad. I'm not, Bruce, don't take it that way, but I like that. I like how much use he gets out of his equipment, and the bees don't seem to mind. Like,
It's
you know
the
what I mean?
beekeeper that thinks
Yeah,
I've got to have this perfect box all the
gotta have
time.
this
And
perfect box. I've got to have this. I mean, yes, it is nice to have nice boxes. I'm not dissing any of that, but like the bees don't care. The bees don't care if they're in a super nice box or a box that has a hole in the side. Like they, I don't know. That's what I observed from being there. Like, and maybe that's more of a, he's got quite a few more colonies than me, but you get some of those commercial guys that got 2,000 boxes and stuff. Surely they're not going to be top notch boxes. Like maybe they are, but yeah.
What is Manhu Harika saying here? Like, I'm really curious about the way
oh,
Bruce offsteps his supers. Glade, you want to take that one?
so yeah. So after you stack a super or two, if you push, you stack that top super on. If you just push it back so that either at the front of the hive or the back of the hive, it doesn't really matter. That there's just a little crack going across the top there between the boxes. Yeah. So they're, instead of those boxes lining up perfect, they're just offset just a little bit front to back. And that gives the bees an upper entrance. And like Bracken said, some of Bruce's hives already had that, but um, I actually do that with mine. With the heat, I think it helps with ventilation a little bit and helps keep um, the hive maybe a little bit cooler because they can ventilate a little better. Um, but I do that all the time with mine. I don't know if you noticed as we were pulling boxes that some of them weren't. You walked up to it and you thought, oh well, he didn't slide that box and get on top quite square with the one underneath it, but that was on purpose, and I like it. I do it all the time with mine. I think the bees, as long as it's not a good strong colony, you don't want to do this to a weak colony because that just gives them extra place that they've got to defend. But a good strong colony, it's not a problem. Um, not an issue at all. The bees will just line up right there on that crack and they'll defend it just fine. And the foragers will use that upper entrance probably more so than the bottom entrance. Now, not every hive does that, but some will. And those that do, it just means there's less congestion down in the bottom where the brood's at. Because if all you have is a bottom entrance and you've got 4 supers of stacked on top of that brood chamber, you've got all those foragers coming in the front door, and then they pass their nectar load off to a receiver bee, which goes up through the brood nest, up into the supers. And if it's stacked 4 high, they've got to go all the way to the top, deposit their load, and come back down. And again, come back down through that brood nest area. And by offsetting that, maybe the third box up or the second super that you add, you offset it just a little bit. And we're talking, you know, just enough for a bee to get through. Not We're not making a great big fat entrance, just wide enough for a bee to get through. Then those foragers can come in the top, deposit, hand off their load to a receiver bee, and be out the door again. And it keeps the congestion out of the brood chamber. Now, not every hive will do that, but because you'll still see quite a bit of activity at the front entrance at the bottom board. But I noticed my hives, when I do that, that upper entrance gets used by quite a bit.
Yeah, they seem to like it. I don't think they
Yeah,
have to need it, but it saves them some resources if it's a strong hive. Improve
yeah,
the ventilation. And by
yeah.
the way, oh, go ahead, Glade.
Again, you need to have a strong hive to do this. You don't want to do this on a weak hive. And if it's only, you've only got one super on, yeah, probably not a big, I wouldn't be doing it with one super. Two supers, I don't usually do it but when I add that third super to my hives, that's when I'm doing it. And if I add a fourth super to it, yeah, certainly. Um, I just think it creates less congestion down in the brood chamber. And now, now the queen can do her business down there and not have all that congestion of nectar going up through the brood chamber and receiver bees going up and down and up and down.
Yeah, Bruce does that. Obviously, Glade does that. He's actually the reason that I do that as well. I just saw him doing it. I'm like, man, the bees seem to really like it. My bees like it for all the reasons that Glade said. And by the way, for those that don't know or follow him, go follow Glade Utah at Utah Bee Man on YouTube. He's been beekeeping a long time, teaches bee classes, drops a lot of knowledge, puts out great content. Did I say that right? Is it Utah Bee Man?
Yep.
Thanks, Glade. Man, I could go on and on about the things that I noticed at Bruce's bee yards that were pretty cool or different. When we were pulling those supers, these frames they were thick, they were full, and it largely there were nine frames in the super. There was one or two that had 8, and those were
there were several that had 8. I I think Bruce picked up some used supers that had 8 frame spacing on them. You notice that on the end bar on the little edge where the frames hang, there were some metal spacers, and some of those were 8 frame spacers. And those frames, when you pulled them out, they were fat. they were they were way thick. I mean, you were cutting. By the time that uncapper went through them, I bet it cut 3/4 of the comb off of it, because just to get it back down to where it normally would be, they were so fat.
So they were really thick, and this was again the second time that he's pulled the supers, and so they'd moved really quickly. Another thing that I noticed is just the location of these yards. We had some of them nestled away back in the woods. Like the Applin Farm ones was out in the field in the wide open, just one long line along the water. The accessibility to water was high. There was accessibility to the tallow, for example, at that Slocum bee yard. Mixture of shade. Like if you think about what was the one that was supposed to have that really mean hive, but it really wasn't that mean when we went there? That was back.
Oh, that was Honey Hill Farms.
Yeah, the Honey Hill.
That set down off the hill just a little bit, those 6 hives. That hive was not as nice as the other hives, because as soon as I cracked the lid and put the fume board on it, I was getting pinged like right and left. Just thump, 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 thump. I'm like, oh, these girls are not happy with. And all I did was crack the lid, slide the fume board on, and I was getting thumped pretty quick. I'm not stunned, but I was getting bumped. And I think they would have been stinging had I not been suited up. I wouldn't have gone into that yard without a suit. There's no way.
Well,
I'm not sure I'd go into any of his yards without a suit.
I want to talk a little bit about the type of pants that I learned to wear when beekeeping, because I got lit up that first night. But Bracken, I saw you went off mute. You got a comment?
Oh, I'm just saying his bees were, they do seem to be a little bit more than here, but maybe it's just because we're used to, but they were way better this year than they were last year. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I'll say that first night that we were pulling those supers, it was raining.
Yeah.
For a bunch of it was raining. They were a little bit cranky, which is fair. I don't.
Yeah, that was to be expected. I mean, you're cracking hives in the rain, and everybody's home. Nobody's flying until you start cracking hives, and then you've got bees flying in the rain. They don't like that.
So that first place that we went that was actually on Bruce's property where he grew up. Is that right? That was the first place we went.
Yeah, his parents and brother's place. Yeah.
Yeah, I got lit up there. I got lit up like from my waist down in my butt. I got hit 3 or 4 times. My thighs. That day I got hit over. It was over 20 times. And I'm like, why aren't you guys like? How many times did you guys get stung that first day, that first night?
I don't know,
I think I took
4 or
4.
5 maybe.
And
Yeah, so
one was in my glove. I got one right on the middle of the back of the calf. And I thought, oh, well, that one's going to welt up a little bit. By the time we got back to the hotel that night, I had to really look at my calf to figure out where it was at. It wasn't even red.
yeah, I
And
was drinking
you were
Benadryl.
red. You were.
Yeah. What I learned, I'm just not used to that volume of bees, frankly. As a backyard beekeeper, that was a new experience for me. And I was wearing the pants that I wear every day when I go out beekeeping. Like, no big deal. I've never had any issues with it. This was just a different level. And so they were darker pants, probably
What
thinner material.
what fabric was that? I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't
These are
jean.
like backpacking type of pants. Like if I'm hiking a mountain or something, I would put those on. So it was a lighter material. But
Right.
um, I I went out and bought a new pair of pants. I got Carhartt, I think, and there was a lighter cream or brown, and then I was fine the next day. I still got some stings, but more in my hands because I was using those nitrile gloves. But that was a good lesson for me. I just hadn't experienced that before. And Bracken, what were you? You didn't have problems. What were you wearing?
I just had on Wrangler pants and that sting stopper jacket, and then I wore those nitrate gloves in his last yard, but other than that, I had my sting stopper gloves on. But I had the occasional here and there, but it wasn't. I didn't get too many too bad.
Was there anything that stood out to you guys about Bruce's management practices, like that he does differently, or tools that he has that are different than yours, or setup that's different that stood out to you?
I could tell he doesn't go through his colonies as often as I do. And I mean, just cracking boxes because some of those boxes were glued together. It was, we were, I mean, you did it. We were bending hive tools trying to get some of those apart.
Oh, I did bend a hive tool. I bent it
Yeah,
back.
it has a lot to do with the propolis too. They get that propolis from trees, and they've got way more trees than us.
So
I think I bet that if you were to crack a hive and go through a box there the same day you did his, I bet within 2-3 days, I bet his would be welded shut again, and I bet ours would still be fairly easy. I don't know. That's my guess. I didn't
maybe,
try that. We got to
maybe.
do a video on that. Like how
It,
fast do they propolize?
yeah. And I get it. He's got what, 150-ish hives. And so, he can't, as you grow in skill, you have to give up some of that. I'll call it one-on-one with every hive. And you just have to kind of treat every yard as one and treat all the hives the same and move on. When you're a smaller scale, you can kind of go through and, like I was back out in my yard when we got home and I was adding honey supers, but um, I was taking the time to pull one box off and checkerboard the new box I was adding on. So, and you can't do that if you're Bruce. You just can't do it. You throw the empty super on and you move to the next hive because you've got too many to get through. So, scale is as you scale up, you just have to kind of eliminate some of that one-on-one with every hive. You just can't do it.
Yeah, that's
And
why
and
I
I noticed that with his hives. You know there were a couple there that he had that nuke in that one yard, and I cracked the nuke open, and it was packed out. just packed. And and I'm like, oh, this this little hive needs some room. And I would have taken the time, if it was me in my yard, I would have taken the time to go grab a bottom board and give it some. It was in a little 7 frame May hive, and it just needed more room. And Bruce will get back to it, right? He'll take care of it. But and at the time, that wasn't the object to look at every hive. It was the object was to pull honey supers. But um, it's just interesting as you scale up. You really kind of lose a little bit of that one-on-one with the bees. There's the man himself.
We gotta all right. Now we gotta stop talking so much crap on Bruce.
Yeah, we're talking about Bruce. How you doing, Bruce?
Good. How are you guys?
Man, you were a little bit gassed yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, you went on the live stream. I'm like,
oh,
it looks like he's just been working
I
himself.
was tired last night. I don't know. Days at the hospital don't give me a lot of energy. I probably had more energy the night after pulling honey than I did after working at the hospital all day. So anyway, yeah. So I've been listening, and I had to step away. My Wi-Fi is we've got one of those little extender things, those little Google extender, little pods or whatever, and it's not working down here. But I do have a couple of little bars on my Wi-Fi, so hopefully it won't buffer. It was buffering a little bit earlier when I was watching, so I was trying to get that figured out for the last couple of minutes. But I heard most of what you guys were saying, so appreciate y'all coming down.
About you, right?
What?
You didn't hear that one thing I said about you, though, right?
I heard everything. I'm just kidding.
Thanks.
It depends on what that one thing was.
I don't think you heard it.
While we were pulling supers that second day, because I didn't have my Apis tactical gloves on. I had those nitrate gloves. I kind of ate honey as we went. Maybe that's terrible. It was good. That was good honey, Bruce. That was good honey. Glade, I'd love your opinion on this, and anybody's, but I noticed that the honey was way thinner. I don't know if that's your experience, Bracken and Glade, but way thinner than mine is when I pull it. Probably just the humidity. I'm not sure. Glade, what was your experience with that?
Oh yeah, way thinner.
Yeah, the spring honey is pretty thick, but the tallow honey, the moisture content is higher than what a lot of people like. We actually measured some at the end of the day. Rusty and I did, and it was over 18. It was like between 18 and 18.5, which some people think they need to just shut it down if it's that high. It's just going to be the end of the world. But it's just been fine over the years. It's always a little bit wetter. Plus, you got to remember the temperature too. It was hot, and so when honey gets warm and gets hot, it thins out a lot. If had it been cooler, had it been like 70 degrees in there, it wouldn't have been that thin. But that's just real typical of it. It is a little thinner, especially when it's so hot. We did run a dehumidifier on it for the 2 days from the time we pulled that first honey on Thursday evening. I guess until we started Saturday morning, we ran a dehumidifier on it. We should have checked some more of it during the day, but we just took a quick sample at the end of the day, and it was 18.4 or 5%, which it is a little higher than I would like it, but most of the time we'll test a little bit as we go along, and usually it's like in the 17s. So I imagine most of it was probably a little lower than that, but yeah, it's thinner, just in large part, I think, because it's so warm. I think that's a big part of it as well, because it's so warm in that honey house. Everybody was dripping with sweat, not only on the days pulling out in the sun, but also in the honey house itself. Fortunately, Bracken was back there where the fan was blowing, but on the other end of the honey house, there was no fan blowing, so it's pretty still and pretty just kind of just hot up in that other end. But it was hot, and our shirts were wet at the end of the day, and it didn't take long for our shirts and pants and everything else to get wet, hats, everything.
Yeah, we're pretty soaked. Go ahead.
I'd be curious, Bruce, with your honey being, and I tasted, several times throughout the couple of days. Your honey's good. I like it.
Yeah, it's real good. Yeah, it is.
It's really good. But I'd be curious if we lowered the moisture content back way down to like 16 or 16 or even a little less, because as you pull that moisture out, it obviously gets thicker, but it seems to concentrate some of the flavor a little more.
I'm sure
And
it
I'd be
does.
curious to see what yours would be like after it's pull some of that moisture
Absolutely.
out.
I'm sure it would concentrate the taste a little bit. I'm just not sure how to do that in the situation that we're in. You know, we
It,
got 2 days to
yeah,
get it all done. I just don't know how you
yeah,
do that. But
yeah. You don't have the time because you'd have to pull honey supers, put it in a room, put a dehumidifier on it, some fans, and let it
and
sit for 3 days.
it'd have to be a room also that didn't have that was sealed off better. The room where we harvested is
Right.
not really sealed. It's got open windows, fans blowing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it would be better. It would be better, ideal if we could do that. We just don't. We're just not set up to be able to do that very well. But you know, some people just think, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world if your honey gets over about 17.5 or 18%.
Oh,
But I've never had. You know, I'm gonna knock on my counter right here where I'm doing this. I've never had any that's fermented in the last 12 years that I've done it, and people always really seem to like my honey, and I sell a lot of it. So, but yeah, I think it would be ideal. I wish we could, but tallow is known for being a little bit wetter than most honeys, and it may just simply be because tallow exists in the South where it's hot and humid, and it becomes, you know, it comes in the hives when that heat and humidity is really picking up in the late spring, and you know there's a fair amount of rain off and on throughout this time of the year usually. If it's a real dry period of time, if you got 4 weeks of no rain or very little rain, then I'm sure it probably is a little bit less. But if it's a typical year like it kind of has been here, once everything kind of got rolling, it's just the way you hear everybody talking about it. Everybody talks about how their tallow is a little bit wetter than the rest of their honey. Our spring honey, I think, would be stack up moisture wise with you guys' honey out there probably, but the summer honey just is a little bit more wet. And I don't know if we ever measured any that was actually that high. Usually when we measure it's like in the 17.5 range, which is still a little bit high, but for some people, I think it's fine. If it's anything, I think ideal anything under about 17.5 or 18 is fine. But I don't put a lot of effort into it or worry too much about it because I don't feel like there's a whole lot I can do about it with the volume I have. If I had a honey house that was
So,
airtight, you know, and I could put it in there like you said, Glade, for 3 or 4 days and just let it sit in there with a dehumidifier and fans and air blowing on it and really, really work on getting it down. I probably could, but I just can't. I can't stress out about it too
yeah.
much. But
And
I
if
do
it's
agree.
working for you, don't break it.
I think it would be better for sure if it was a little bit less wet. But people down here that's just what we're used to, and it works fine. And when it's cooler, it's not near as thick. I mean, it does. You know, when it's cooler, like say room temperature, it's not as thick. It kind of does go ahead and, you know, it's not just completely like water like it is when it's like 95 degrees in that honey house. You know, it's pretty warm in there.
It was delicious, Bruce. It was awesome, and the whole operation was really cool. I gotta pause for a second because Redfish sent me this Roll Tide
There you
Alabama.
go. All right, Roll Tide. I like
So
it.
I never thought I would say Roll Tide and be happy about it. But I sent Redfish BYU hat. So hopefully we get some Go Cougs in the house every once in a while. Good sports.
I need to get one of those hats that has house divided or has the half Alabama, half BYU on it. I need to get one of those hats because I it's kind of weird because I went to BYU. I played football at BYU years ago. I love BYU is my number one team. Has been really since I was probably about a senior in high school, senior in high school. I've always been a member of our church, but then that was the year BYU. My senior years when BYU won the national championship that fall. So I was a fan before them, but down here I used to have to we had those big satellite dishes and we had to turn it to the right location to be able, because they never show BYU games down here because it wasn't like it is now. That year, 84, I think was the first year they showed a football game on ESPN, and BYU in Pittsburgh was the first game ever on ESPN. And so, it was hard to watch them down here that year, but they won the national championship. But I always followed Alabama from the time I was very little. And I tell people, honestly, for the last several years, I think both schools have been kind of equal, kind of even in my mind as far as I just Roll Tide and go Cougars, and I always tell people BYU is my favorite team, but Alabama hasn't been bad to fall back on. But now the BYU's kind of turning the corner, I'm really following everything they're doing now even closer, and it's pretty exciting times for us BYU Cougar fans. But but I still say Roll Tide. Still got the hat. It's right here. I've got them both right here. But really, what I've been doing lately is wearing my Bruce's Bees hat.
Those are nice.
You guys had them on too. So I've been trying to kind of get that brand going a little bit as well. But
before we start wrapping up and do the giveaway, by the way, like we're doing Apis tactical gloves. Now is not the time to leave. Like we're going to give away these sweet gloves. Talk to us about the extraction operation a little bit, Bruce. Like it was, and we can jump in, share our experiences, but it was efficient, went through a lot of frames. And I mean, it's still a long day, but man, it seemed as about efficient as I seen.
Yeah, my daughter sent me a picture, I think it was yesterday or the day before, of that we took when we were extracting in my garage out here. I've got a 1-car garage. I used to pull all the boxes myself. We started off using a little 3-frame extractor with those little comb capper uncappers on a 5-gallon bucket, and we used to use a serrated knife. I've done a little bit with the first couple of years. We used the Bee Club's hot knife and their extractor system. Then when I got my first one, it was a 3-frame hand crank extractor. And we did thousands of pounds probably with that little hand crank extractor over the years. But finally, I had to get my 20-frame Maxent. We still did it in the garage for a couple of years. And finally, I think it was probably around COVID time, maybe the year before that. I'm not sure which year it was exactly, but Rusty's been my friend for a while. And I called him. I said, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got too much honey to do in my 1-car garage. And he had helped me build it. We had an uncapping tank, and he had an uncapping tank, and we both had the Simple Harmony Farms uncappers. And I had a 20-frame Max, and he had a 30-frame license extractor. And we just decided, he said, well, why don't you just bring all your stuff down here and we'll do it together. And that's kind of how this relationship started. And over the years, the last probably 4 years or so, probably 4 years, maybe 5 at the most, we've just kind of been trying to get the system better and better. For years, we did it with, we would have 2 lines going with the Simple Harmony Farms uncapper. And we would just go through. We had an extractor sitting at each end of each uncapper on each side of the room there. And kind of where the boxes were stacked this time, we had an uncapper sitting there. And we didn't have near as much honey then. I think we did like 75 boxes one time on one of my earlier harvests in that facility. We thought we had just done a lot, which that is a lot. But then 2 years ago, we used that system again. And last year, I was just like, man, because those Simple Harmony Farms and cappers, you push it down through the blades, you pull it up over and over again, and it just wears you out. And then we also used paint strainers in 5-gallon buckets, which works good. We did that, for years that way. But your forearms get tired from the uncappers, and your forearms get tired from lifting the paint strainers out of the buckets and trying. It gets messy too, real messy, because it's hard to keep the honey from dripping all over the place. Your buckets get messy when you're done. It's just hard to keep them clean. So last year, I guess it would have been 23-24, winter of 23-24. I called Rusty and I said, man, we got to figure something out. We got to figure out how can be more efficient. We started talking about it. And that was about the time that Tyler was selling the uncapper, the Callan uncapper that we have. He just had an old uncapper. He was getting a new system. And Rusty and I drove down there, and they had the uncapper and the wax spinner there. And Rusty, the uncapper was it was kind of rough shape. It looked like it was functional, but it needed some work. And I said, if I buy this thing, can you keep it running? And he said, of course I can. Or he said, yes. And so I bought those 2 items, which are complete game changers. I bought the uncapper, the Callan uncapper, which is like a 1970s model. It's really old. It's one of the original ones, I think. And Rusty, last year we kind of had some kinks in it. Bracken will tell you we had to sometimes the motor wouldn't start, and you'd have to take some pliers and just bump it or whatever you had to do and twist it to get the motor to start, because the motor, I guess, was getting old. And it was tough to get the blades adjusted. Rusty made a lot of adaptations to it last year and had to call the company to get parts and to figure out how to set up the frames, the right distance and everything. And we got it humming pretty good by the end of the year last year. And then he actually was testing for our spring harvest this year, and the motor went dead on it 2 days before our spring harvest. And so he drove up to Montgomery and got a motor, and now it purrs like a kitten, doesn't it, Bracken? It works perfectly. It's working like a fine-tuned machine now, finally. That was the number one thing I think that really sped up our process. The second thing we did was we did our first harvest last year, the spring harvest. We had the Callan uncapper, and then Rusty has like this 50-gallon, I think it's 55-gallon, just a tank. I think maybe it's used for brewing or something like that, but it's got spout on the front that he uses to bottle it up with. And we thought we can just pour the buckets in there, and then we won't have to strain with paint filters. And originally he set up a system where he's going to put I think a paint filter in the bucket and then pour it in there, let it drain, kind of like the hop spider concept, but just poke, drill holes in the buckets. And it just did not work well. The spring honey was so thick, and we ended up, I think, straining a bunch of those with paint strainers anyway. And then by the summer harvest, I had heard from someone, or he had, about the hop spiders, which you can get them from a company. We get them from a company up in Canada. They're 7-gallon hop spiders. They're about $160, $180, $80 a piece. We ordered 2 of those, and that made a huge difference. You just pour them through the hop spiders into the big tank. And the other thing we did was, I said, man, I'm like, we need a bigger extractor. I'm like, my 20 frame Maxon isn't cutting it. I want to get a bigger. So I bought a Hilco 32 frame Mega Max extractor. And then when the thing came in, Rusty had a 30 frame license, but as soon as he saw the one I got, he ordered one too. So we have 2 of those. So now we're running 64 at the time. The uncapping machine is doing great. We put the wax into the wax spinner. As the frames come out of the uncapper, we scratch or do the pin roller on any cappings that don't get uncapped, and then we just put them in and out of the extractors fast.
Oh,
The Wi-Fi
You
caught
guys
it.
hear me?
Oh, you're back.
Okay, I think it's my stupid Wi-Fi. Anyway, but Glade is an expert at loading and unloading those extractors. I guess he's out of Hilco, and he gave me some suggestions as well. So we take it from the boxes. We have a cracker box to pop the frames up, so we have to use a Hive tool. Zach did that, handed the frames to Bracken. Bracken did most of the uncapping, put it around that capper, turn the machine on, go through the uncapper. We usually have a couple people looking at the frames as they come through, making sure their cappings are all off, scratched off. Then we have those same 2 people will often be handing them to the people who are loading and unloading the extractors. And then we had a guy that was, and once the frames get done in extracting, there's someone usually sitting at the spout or at the gate. They have a little strainer. We have just a little colander strainer thing that you put on the top of the buckets to get the bigger chunks of wax out, and you just kind of rotate them through. And as soon as there's enough honey in there to be worth pouring into the thing, we pour it into the bucket through the hop spider. It comes into the bucket, comes out. It just drain constantly throughout the day in that thing. I have the new 5-gallon buckets that we use. The final product is in that, underneath that thing, and we had it set up with had an alarm from JL Apiaries. If you look at my video that's going to be coming out, I did a short on my channel that has it on there, and also I'll talk about it when I do my long form video if I ever get that done. And we had Sean down there managing that, and it had that alarm. Actually, it just works well. It gets up to within, I think, 2 inches of the top, and it beeps. And so
I
you don't
ordered one
overflow the
and had it.
buckets, but
It
it
was
just worked. We really had a crew that everybody had a crew that kind of figured out a spot, and then we got it all done, and we ended up with, I think, 161 buckets or something total for the day. And so it was, well over 9,000 pounds. 152 for me, and then 9 for the guy I manage his hives for him, Honey Hill Farm. So that was well over, we're between 9,500 and 10,000 pounds that we did in one day. And we did it in less than 12 hours, which was incredible. I thought we'd be there till 9 or 10 o'clock just extracting. We were cleaned up and out of there by probably about 9 o'clock or so, I think, 9 or 9:30, which was after we extracted everything, got the buckets and boxes and everything moved out of there and got it all cleaned up. So
that was a good crew, Bruce. You put together
it was a great
crew.
It was an incredible crew. What I really like about that crew was, and then I've talked about this, and Rusty and I have talked about this. Everyone just kind of, at first, was a little bit. I think Glade, we talked about it too. I think the 3 of us did. I know Bracken, Glade, and I talked about it. I think you might have been gone, Jeb, but the crew, it was a little chaotic at first. Rusty and I talked about this some. Like, everybody was just kind of standing around, didn't know what to do. But once Rusty it was like everybody was huddled up around that extractor at the beginning of the day. And we said a word of prayer. Rusty offered a prayer for us, which was awesome. That helped us. There's no doubt we had divine intervention, that nobody got seriously hurt, and I think too that we were able to get it done so efficiently. All the equipment ran smoothly. But then once people kind of spread out and kind of figured out what worked best for them, everybody kind of got their spot figured out. and everybody kind of got their job going. And Zach was on the cracking machine, Bracken was on the uncapper, and then we had Glade and those two, Oliver and Nash, and some other people just working the extractors and the uncapping table. Lee and his wife were there just kind of working around doing different things. I was kind of running all over the place, and they had Sean filling the buckets, and it just turned into an absolute, it was like a
Production
machine. The
line.
whole thing went well. And Jeb was there until about 1:30, 2 o'clock. Then about the time he left, Lisa came, and my wife came when my son-in-law left. Rylan was there in the morning. She came and helped kind of filled in. And so we just had the perfect combination of people that stayed all day and those that kind of helped relieve each other. And that's kind of what I wanted to happen, but you never know if it's going to come together until you actually show up and do it. And I can't thank you guys enough. It was, kind of the theme of the weekend to me was hard work, fellowship, and fun. Would you guys think that pretty much describes it? Because it was hard work, very hard work. I also really appreciate Lee for coming down. Lee and Tana, Lee got out there on Friday afternoon, and it was real hot, but he managed those fume boards, man. And I think our speed picked up dramatically when he was just spraying those fume boards and getting them slapped on the hives. And as soon as we take a box off, he'd put a couple squirts on the fume board, slap it back on there, and we just moved so much faster. We moved a lot of boxes in a hurry, but I can't think of any other really words to describe it other than hard work, because it was, a lot of great fellowship and a lot of fun. And I guess we could add the word sweat in there too, because there's a lot of that going on. Glade, I heard you guys talking earlier about the number of drinks consumed. That big Yeti cooler from my son-in-law that we used, it was completely full of drinks. We had water in there. We had Gatorade, a few kind of sodas in there, and just all kinds of different drinks that my wife kind of got stashed up for us. It was completely full of drinks, and then we poured ice over the top and just crammed them in there as tight as I could. And at the end of the day, there were just a very few, maybe 4 or 5 drinks left in there. And so we consumed a lot of fluids. And like you said, I think you guys consumed more than I did, but I drank my fair share. You can't survive down here in the heat unless you can stay hydrated. I've tried that before. It doesn't work very well. So, but I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate you guys flying down here. I keep wondering, like, you got Glade and Jed, you guys experienced for the first time, but Bracken, he's crazy enough to have done it twice, man. I don't know. I can understand people pulling people into it once, but when people keep coming back, there must be more to it than just hard work. It must be something that people want to do. Cause I've had several people, Lisa's been back for several years now. And some people one time is enough, but other people just keep coming back for more. And it's just a really cool event. I just absolutely love it. I'm super exhausted and tired when it's all over, but I just am super satisfied as well. I hope you guys felt the same way.
Oh yeah. Like I'd do that again. We knew what we were getting into. It was hard work but it was a lot of fun, gratifying, spending time with really good people. And yeah, it was great. Brian, like everybody, Brian knows how to do it. Like Castle Hives, show up at the end of the stream, sneak in, put in #gloves. For the gloves, get some of these Apis tactical gloves. Give them some.
There
gloves.
is.
That's right. Good to.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining, Brian. Well, Bracken, you kind of haven't said a bunch for very much, but you any thoughts on the extraction operation before we start putting a bow on this?
No, I think it was like Bruce nailed it. It ran. I thought it was significantly more efficient than last year. Not that last year wasn't efficient, because it was, but just the way it flowed. We all grabbed a spot. We all, did one thing at a time and managed that one task and accomplished it, and it just turned into a good day. So,
yeah, it was awesome. Well, let's do this. We got to get Bracken to dinner with his family. And Glade's is it your daughter? Is at the hospital right now? He's about to be a grandpa again.
Yep.
Oh,
Waiting for number 3.
Yeah, that's exciting. So we got to get these guys out of here. So #gloves for these sweet gloves. For the winner, I'll put my email address in the chat and just send me your address and your size, and I'll accommodate the best I can. And let's do it. So #gloves. I think we got most everybody. Bracken, are you able to share your screen, or we'll just trust you?
I can share it. Let me put a couple more here streaming in.
We got Brian C. We got Brian Castle Hives.
Don't mind my horrible quick spelling with these. So if
we got Tiny Creek.
Yeah, I don't have there's I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in. Is all there's
Did you get DC?
Granado. Yeah, I got DC.
Granado honey.
Yeah, Granado. My money's on Granado this time around, guys. My money's on Granado is gonna win it.
I think Brian C is gonna get it. Okay, let me see if I can present this. Brian C.
Who you got winning, Glade? Who you betting on?
Oh, DC's gonna win this.
DC's gonna win. DC deserves it. And by the way, like caveat is you got to be in the country. I'm sorry for those outside of the country. My wife forbade me. I'm blaming her.
Wheel of names.
Hey, I found out how much it is to ship a bucket of honey from Alabama to California yesterday. I had someone order one.
Yeah.
It's $95 for a 5-gallon bucket from Alabama to California, by the way, just to let you know. And that's on Shopify. It's probably more if you just go to the post office or whatever.
Wait, how much was it?
$95.
For a what size?
To a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket.
5-gallon bucket?
It's not that much through Shopify in most parts of the country, but California, yeah, I figured out.
Hey, Bracken, get that was good honey, man.
Like, I can ship it. I can ship it to you. You guys, it's on the website, so anyone who wants some can. I've got plenty. I've got enough.
You got to figure out what that orange honey was, though.
Yeah, it was really good
stuff.
Did you guys talk about that? I was on for a few minutes.
No,
tell us about the orange honey. Did you get?
We were just uncapping real quick, guys. We were just uncapping the honey, and we just had 2 or 3 frames that it looked as orange as it was just orange honey. It wasn't the light color of spring honey. It wasn't the amber color of tallow. It was like just orange. And so I'm like, let's taste this honey. Let's see what it tastes like. And it was probably the best honey, some of the best honey I've ever tasted. It was just totally different from everything else. I think the bees possibly might have gotten into some satsuma blooms. We call it orange blossom honey, and it tasted just like I guess kind of like orange blossom honey would, but it was so good. And we just mixed it in with everything else. So, but it was kind of a fun little side story there.
Yeah, those just kind of popped up. I was watching frames come through, and everything looked about the same. Some of it a little bit lighter, but then those popped up, and
they were completely different.
Yeah,
I
were different.
I think there are satsuma trees around here, which is like a tangerine, and it's just it's basically people around here call them just oranges. They're not technically oranges, but they're like a tangerine type thing, and they are extremely good. But I just wonder if the bees found a satsuma orchard or satsuma tree somewhere and got into it. They must have. It was good though.
That's awesome. All right, Bracken, let her roll. Let's my money's on Granado.
Okay, here we go.
Oh snap! Who did you guess, Glade?
DC. I told you DC was going to win that.
I don't like the gloves, but yeah, DC.
Doesn't take Glade to Vegas. Take that one.
All right, DC. There's my email address. Send me your address and your size, and I'll accommodate the best I can. You got a sweet prize coming your way, man. These are legit gloves. I think Bruce has got a pair of these too. Glade's got a pair. I got a pair.
I do. They're great. I just don't wear them most of the time if I need dexterity. But they are extremely. If I really am doing some work where I don't need dexterity really good, I wear them. But I'm kind of used to my nitrile gloves. But I have worn them quite a bit, and I don't know if I've been stung through them all year. Maybe once. Even I'm working really mean bees. Like for example, if I'm weed eating or something, and I just don't need to. I'll put those on sometimes, or if I'm, just moving big things around, big boxes and all, I'll do that. But
yeah.
Anyway, they're very well made gloves. They're great gloves.
Bracken, before we wrap, are we on your channel live stream next week?
Are we getting? It's 4th of July.
Ooh, maybe we're not doing next week.
Yeah, I'm the 3rd. I've got some stuff going on, so I think we're gonna have to probably push.
I do 2 weeks. Glade, we gonna get you? I'm trying to commit you on live YouTube television. We gonna get you out more often for the Utah crew?
Yeah,
I think he will now that he knows us.
Yeah.
Just needed that little intro.
All right, and there's some other people that we need to have join. I want to have Keith over at Half Tracks. What is it, Half Tracks and Honey? I want to have him join. I love
Backpacks and
that guy.
honeybees.
Honeybee,
I
yeah.
wanna
Keith,
I
Keith
wanna
is Keith. There's
I
a lot
wanna
of
get my
cool people.
mentor on here.
Listen,
wanna
let me
get
tell you about
Brad on.
Keith. If you ever look in the dictionary and you see the word cool, like cool, like awesome, cool, you'll see a picture of Keith right next to it. He's one of the coolest guys on the planet. Keith is awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to get him out. There's probably some others. Like if
There's a lot.
you want us to have join, like have them join. And Bruce, we're grateful for you, man. Like thanks for come hang out at your operation and have that experience. And let's do it again. And thanks for joining tonight.
Yes, sir. I appreciate y'all having me on. I really appreciate you guys coming down and sweating, literally sweating for my operation. And it was just a great experience, though. That's really what I live for. I love the bees and the honey, but I do probably love the community just as much or more.
Maybe we'll get some Alabama detox shirts made for next year, Bracken. How about that?
That'd be fun. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right. I'm clicking the end stream button. Over and out, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Night, everybody.
See ya.